Welcome to Bob's Bulletins. Today's top story, Kulipari, an army of frogs? Yep, you heard it right. This is all about walking and talking frogs. So this is a Netflix original series that was released in September of 2016. It is based on the book created by Trevor Price, and he also helped produce and create the show. So this show was released with 13 episodes, each one between 22 to 23 minutes long. So it's not too much, but I will say this show is, like, every episode's cram-packed. Like, there's so many arcs. There's probably like 6 or 7 arcs in this story in these 13 episodes. So you never really get bored. There's always something going on. It's not like some shows where there's only one arc, and by the end of it you're like, okay, wrap it up. I'm getting tired of seeing all this. So the story is very clever. Basically, just to like give you an overview of the story, Amphibiland, the frogs were once at war with the scorpions, and the Turtle King created a veil to protect the frogs from the scorpions. And the scorpions want to get back through the veil to take over Amphibilands and eat and kill the frogs. So this is kind of two sets at the beginning. Scorpions are trying to get into the veil, and the frogs just don't know anything. They're just living happy, lazy lives. Except for one, whose name is Daryl, who's the main character. He still wants to be a warrior and everything, still thinks the scorpions are coming, and he wants to be a Kulipari, which is a race of warrior frogs that have like poison, kind of like a poison dart frog, and they use that poison to activate special powers. Well, the problem is Daryl's just a cane frog. He doesn't have no poison, even though his dad was a Kulipari. So he kind of wants to be like his dad, a warrior, hero, and everything like that, even though he doesn't have the poison. So he keeps training and working hard, and he trains with the second character, whose name is G. That's his best friend, who kind of has a more laid-back approach. He's kind of the comedic thing in this movie, comedic element in this movie, and or TV show, and he just loves eating. So that's his thing. He loves to eat. He loves to kind of be laid back and everything like that. And he actually always plays the scorpion when they spar. So you also get Cora, who's kind of the female element, and she loves battlefield medicine. So her granny taught her everything she knows about how to, dress wounds and stuff like that. So she follows Daryl around trying to hope he gets hurt so she can practice, not necessarily wanting him to get hurt, but wants to practice her medicine and everything like that. So while this is all happening inside, the scorpions are out trying to make alliances to bring down the veil. And Lord Marmu, who's the leader, has created the largest scorpion army in history. He's united all the clans to come forth and take over Amphibilands. So that's pretty much the gist of what's going on. This story is very clever. I will say it's very enjoyable. It's unique. I mean, walking, like I said earlier, walking, talking frogs. They're acting like they're warriors, or you can see their village. They created a market scene, so you can see what frogs would be buying in the market. It's very clever. Just some of the things you would think a frog would buy, That's pretty awesome. The scorpions themselves, the story behind them is pretty cool. How only the strongest survive and everything, and that's how they make this awesome army. The story of the veil and how it goes into effect, and kind of the magic that's interweaving. I will say though, one problem with this I've run into is jumps in the story, and that happens. That's the only problem I will say about this being so cram-packed full of stuff. I like that it's cram-packed. It keeps you entertained. You're always waiting for the next storyline, but there is several parts in this where it just goes blank. You still have questions. How did this happen? It jumps from one story to the next. Like, it'll end on this note, and then the next episode, or like halfway through the episode, it'll be starting on this note. Well, how did they get to that note? And I know they only had 13 episodes, so they had to cram as much as they could and kind of cut back. And sometimes they do kind of do flashbacks or kind of snippets here, like, oh, this is how we did it. But I wish they would have done it at that time. It would have made it a lot more enjoyable to me if they would have done it at that time and made the series a little bit longer. There is another season, but in this season only, it's kind of its own separate thing because it's called something different. So I would have liked them to break the Army of Frogs story arc into like maybe 2 seasons, maybe even 3. It would have been more enjoyable. It just is cram-packed and does do a lot of the jumps. So into the animation, which is where this it kind of takes a nosedive. The character designs are clever, I will say that, with the frogs and the Kulipari and even the scorpions themselves, you know, because you're making animals stand upright and walk like we do. So that is really clever how they did that. But it is a flat background animation, which if you don't know, or a still background, the background stays still or static, and the characters are put on top of it. And they move, but the background never does. This is kind of how a lot of early animation was done, like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, stuff like that, had a still background, and the characters moved. That's how this is, or at least how it seems that it is. Because a lot of the times you'll see the characters, and then the background's kind of blurry, and just doesn't change. You don't really get the trees blowing in the wind, or, you know, shadows on the mountains as the clouds cross. Stuff like that doesn't really happen in this show. And the walking to me is kind of choppy. To me it sounds like, sounds in animation. No, looks like they didn't do the half step. So it's kind of like they just take one step and then another step instead of like bringing their legs up to a half step, so it kind of pops. Which I know you're making a scorpion walk and a frog walk on two legs, so I'm sure it's hard to do. You know, I'm not trying to belittle the animators by any means, but I will say anytime there's a still shot, like when you first see the valley, or when you see the Spider Queen's castle, or some of the other scenes in this movie, they're gorgeous. I mean, it takes your breath away. They're just that pretty. You just want to pause and make it a back screen or something like that. Another gripe I will have is the water animation was horrible. It's probably one of the worst water animations I've ever seen. It's so terrible. We won't even go into it. So it's that bad. So, and there is scenes where like G was walking into a forest, and instead of the trees kind of move, maybe some leaves fall, the shadows kind of flicker, he just went poof. He literally just hit the forest and disappeared. You didn't even see him walking through the forest, which I know is a lot more animating, takes a lot more budget and everything like that. But, you know, this film does have several scenes like that, or several scenes kind of like, how the heck did that happen kind of thing. And not even like, how did that happen in the story, just like, why did it disappear, or how did it go from this point to this point, you know, stuff like that. It does have a lot of those. So the animation is not great in this series, but I will say overall it's still enjoyable. Like, the animation may be choppy and stuff like that, and the waterbend animation was so bad, but the story just is so good that it kind of alleviates that. Like, to me, the story was just so unique and so clever, and it kind of makes me think like this is based on a book by Trevor Price, which I believe was graphic novels. So it kind of makes you feel like you're looking at a comic book. So that's kind of how the animation style is. It's kind of comic booky, you know. It's like if you could take the comic book that he wrote and turn it into a Flickr book. That's how this animation would be. Not necessarily the crispest and not necessarily the prettiest, but if you kind of look at it from that eye and not look at it to be like up to par with like some of today's animation that makes it look like it's real life, just like if you could make a real life a cartoon, that's how it would be. So if you look at it kind of like a flip book animation, it really helps you see that it is pretty good if you look at it from that sense. And if this was hand drawn, which I'm pretty sure it was, I mean, it does take some skill to draw some of these static motions and some of the background and everything. And on the lower budget film, if you have the largest scorpion army in the world, you can't necessarily on a low budget film draw each individual scorpion. So like on one scene, instead of doing that, they had them light torches in the dark, so you just draw a dot, you know. But it is a good way of doing it cheaply to show how large the army is. So to jump right into, I know this is kind of on the back burner in this film, I just thought the story was so clever that I didn't really think the voice acting was as prevalent in this film. I think honestly any person could have voice acted these characters and I would have loved it, because I do think the story is that clever. But there is some big names in this movie. Like, one of the characters, Old Jeer, is played by Mark Hamill, who, you know, is one of the kings of voice acting there are. I mean, he's one of the best. So he, of course, did a good job, you know, in this film. Josh Keaton, he played Daryl. He played the main character. Mikey Kelly, I'm looking at my notes. Mikey Kelly played G. Keith David was in this movie, which he does a lot of voice acting too. He's been in several films as well, and he plays Lord Marmu, so he has that bad guy, typical bad guy voice, and he really brought something to the character, made you feel like he was evil. Well, this one makes it so you see the bad guy's completely evil and you don't see his point and you're rooting for the good one, which I like as well. Like, I do like that. It's kind of a nice reprieve from the whole weird twisted, who should I like? Is the bad guy really right? Or I could see both points. No, this one, the good guy's right. The bad guy needs to go down, you know, which I do like. It's kind of a refreshing, lighthearted thing and everything like that. This movie does have some twists in it, so I keep saying movie. This TV show does have some twists in it, so it's not boring at all, and I mean, you'll just have to watch it. So my review, I mean, the animation was choppy, it was kind of bad, but the story made up for it twice-fold. The voice acting that was in it was clever. Like I said, some big names in it. I think it was really good. I don't really think it would matter as much. I think I would enjoy this, whoever played the voice acting, just because the story is so unique. I mean, I have actually watched this series over probably about 3 times in the last, week or two, so I like it that much. Overall, I am going to say this, I'm going to say rent it on Redbox. I do think this is, as good as it is, it's definitely going to appeal more to some than to others. I think it's definitely, some people will really love it, and then some people's going to hate it, and then some people's going to be in between, like, it's okay. So I definitely think you should. It's on Netflix. I personally would say watch it, but, it's going to be up to you. Whatever you want to do, I would say go watch it just for its interesting concept. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a comment down below on what you would like to see me review next. While you're down there, make sure you hit that like button or dislike button if you didn't like it. And make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that little bell so you don't miss the next issue of Bob's Bulletins. Until next time, Bob out.